The year is 1876. Deep within the dusty archives of London, a hidden document lies undisturbed. It is a map showing the terrifying truth about our modern cities. City officials desperately tried to burn every copy. They wanted to erase the grim reality, drawn in black ink. But one singular map survived the flames of censorship. To understand why this document was so dangerous, we must travel back to the Victorian era. Urban centers were booming, with unprecedented wealth and crippling industrial poverty everywhere. Thick black smoke choked the narrow streets. Millions of people crowded into fragile brick buildings. Disease was not just a tragic accident, it was an unavoidable daily expectation. Cholera and tuberculosis swept through the slums like invisible fires. Doctors struggled to understand how these horrible plagues traveled from one unfortunate victim to the next innocent person. Most medical experts blamed foul air from rotting garbage. They called this invisible menace miasma. But a young eccentric investigator believed the real killer possessed a different shape. He began walking through the darkest alleys of the city. Armed with only a notebook and relentless curiosity, he recorded every single death that occurred within the district. Each terrifying fatality became a small red dot on his large parchment. Slowly, a pattern emerged from the chaos. It was a pattern that horrified the local authorities. The dots were not random. They clustered around specific locations. The disease was not floating in the wind. It was flowing directly through the intricate city water systems. He discovered that human waste was contaminating the drinking supply. The poorest neighborhoods were intentionally neglected by rich contractors, who built cheap pipes near the massive sewer lines. The map proved that wealth inequality was literally killing people. This revelation terrified the wealthy elite. They realized the public would demand massive investments in new sanitation infrastructure. Powerful men organized a secret meeting to discuss the crisis. They knew the investigator possessed undeniable evidence. They decided to crush his work before it reached the newspapers. Police officers raided the small printing press during the night. They smashed the delicate machinery and confiscated the freshly printed maps. The government ordered total silence and compliance. Our investigator managed to hide one single copy away. He placed it inside a leather journal and buried it under the floorboards of his crumbling old wooden house. He died mysteriously a few months after the terrifying raid. Official records claimed he suffered a sudden heart attack. Many modern historians suspect he was actually poisoned quietly. Decades passed without any mention of his incredible forgotten map. The city continued to suffer through massive deadly outbreaks. Thousands of innocent citizens perished in agonizing preventable pain. A new generation of doctors eventually realized something was wrong. They started questioning the old theories about dirty air. They demanded better investigations into the urban living conditions. A construction crew demolished the old wooden house years later. Beneath the dusty planks, they discovered the forgotten leather journal. The hidden truth was finally brought into daylight. Scientists analyzed the fragile parchment with sheer absolute wonder. The dots perfectly aligned with the underground municipal water pumps. It was a masterpiece of early epidemiological data visualization. The city council could no longer deny the glaring facts. They were forced to completely redesign the sewage networks. Modern sanitation engineering was officially born from this map. This single document shifted power away from corrupt wealthy landlords. It placed responsibility firmly into the hands of science. Data became the ultimate weapon against rampant urban corruption. But the story of this terrifying map holds deeper secrets. Researchers noticed another unsettling pattern hidden within the ink. It showed something far more sinister than faulty pipes. Certain neighborhoods completely bypassed the terrible deadly outbreak. These safe zones were not just populated by the very wealthy. They shared another highly specific and bizarre geographical feature. They were all located near huge active industrial breweries. The factory workers drank fermented beverages instead of dangerous water. The boiling process effectively killed all the deadly bacteria. The map inadvertently proved that clean hydration was essential survival. The authorities realized providing clean water would cost millions. It was cheaper to simply let poor people perish. This brutal economic reality was the true terrifying secret everywhere. Governments understood the absolute cure, but deliberately ignored it completely. The disease was permitted to regulate population sizes. When citizens finally understood this cold mathematical approach to life, riots started erupting across the major sprawling urban slums. The elite needed a distraction to survive the chaos. Politicians promised massive new public works to quell the violence. They built beautiful parks and grand monumental city squares. But underground, the cheapest possible pipes were still installed. The visual power of the recovered map changed global medicine. It taught us to look beyond the immediate individual symptoms. It forced society to examine the broader systems. Today, this fragile piece of history sits inside a museum. It is protected by thick glass and strict security measures. It serves as a reminder of past atrocities. Visitors stare at the tiny red dots with profound unease. They realize those marks represent real human beings suffering greatly. Each dot was a family torn apart forever. But what if the map reveals something about our present? Look closely at modern disease tracking across our wealthy nations. You will spot a deeply familiar, disturbing pattern. We still see illness cluster heavily in marginalized, poorer communities. The pipes might be modernized with better filtered clean water, but the fundamental structural inequality remains completely unchanged. Modern viruses exploit the exact same social vulnerabilities we built. Overcrowded housing and poor nutrition invite terrible new modern plagues. We have not learned the final critical lesson. The man who drew this map sacrificed his entire life. He stepped into the darkness to find the real truth. He gave humanity a lens to see clearly. In return, the powerful authorities tried to erase his legacy. They feared the very knowledge he fought so hard to provide. Truth is always dangerous to absolute power. Think about the current digital maps tracking our daily movements. Data is collected by massive corporations. Every single passing second, they know exactly where we go every day. Could this modern data be used to protect our health? Absolutely, but it is primarily used to sell us products. We possess the tools but lack the will. Imagine if a modern investigator mapped our hidden toxic environments. Suppose they plotted the chemical exposures in our poorest cities. Would the authorities try to hide that map? History suggests they would absolutely attempt to bury the evidence. Powerful industries spend billions lobbying against environmental safety regulations today. The spirit of the 19th century remains alive. Let us look closer at the intricate details of the map. The streets are drawn with meticulous, careful, delicate precision. Every corner represents a specific, unique, tragic story. Notice how the pump on Broad Street is heavily circled. This was the dark epicenter of the massive, terrifying outbreak. Removing the handle stopped the tragedy very quickly. That simple mechanical action saved hundreds of innocent, fragile lives. But it was only a temporary fix for a larger problem. The entire underground world needed complete reconstruction. Engineers slowly began building massive, beautiful brick tunnels deep underground. They diverted the terrible flowing waste away from the drinking water. The city finally started breathing clean air. Yet the forgotten hero who catalyzed this enormous monumental change was ignored. His grave was left unmarked for many long decades. He received absolutely no contemporary public honors. We must remember that science often faces brutal, aggressive opposition. Whenever facts threaten the massive profits of powerful ruling elites, those facts will be fiercely and violently attacked. The 1876 map is a profoundly terrifying document. It reminds us that our spectacular modern cities are fragile illusions. Civilization depends entirely upon hidden functioning pipes. If those pipes fail, the terrifying chaos will return instantly. The invisible boundaries between the rich and the poor will dissolve. Disease does not respect any bank accounts. Look at the edges of the old fragile parchment again. You can see tiny burnt marks along the very bottom corner. The fire almost consumed the absolute truth. How many other historical documents were successfully burned to ashes? How many other brilliant, heroic investigators were silenced forever before publishing? We will simply never know the answers. Our reality is shaped by the evidence that miraculously survives. The surviving records write the official mainstream version of human history. The destroyed evidence represents our greatest tragedies. This map remains a beacon of sheer, undeniable scientific integrity. It forces every single viewer to question their own daily reality. What hidden dangers surround us right now? Are our current leaders ignoring a massive new invisible threat? Are they protecting corporate interests while innocent citizens suffer terribly again? The echoes of the past remain loud. Every time you turn on a faucet and drink deeply, remember the terrifying forgotten map. Remember the desperate fight for basic survival. Remember the red dots of death. Those dark stains of ink changed the entire modern world. They forced humanity to evolve past ignorance and embrace scientific truth. But evolution is a continuous, hard process. We must remain vigilant against the forces of deliberate ignorance. We must always protect the people who draw the controversial maps. We need their brave and honest vision. The disease was terrifying, but the human cover-up was worse. The map revealed the absolute darkest corners of corrupt political power. It was a mirror reflecting society perfectly. Next time you walk through a crowded modern urban street, think about what flows beneath your very own feet right now. Think about the hidden infrastructure saving you. The ghost of the forgotten investigator still walks among us. He whispers through the flowing clean water and the clear air. He warns us to never stop watching. Because the moment we close our eyes to the truth, the terrifying darkness will inevitably return to claim our modern cities. The map was merely the first warning.